this is one of the dashboards that that I can't live without. I love it. Use it every day. This governs a lot of my trading and a lot of the things that I talk about when I talk about the EVE Online markets. And one thing that became apparent this week was salvage pricing. So you can see right here, for example, tier 1 salvage is up 12% on average this week. There are some of them that are up 20%. If I go to my Oz report dashboard here, you can see that category on the top left is called trending up this week. Those are items with a daily trade volume above 5 billion that are rising the quickest in price. That's the top 10 in New Eden, and you can see that out of the top 4, 3 are tier 1 salvage, and they're going up 25 to 40%. And this is a massive part of the EVE Online economy. So you might be asking, what the hell is going on there? And to discuss that, we're going to have no other than Sir SmashAlot on here. Smash, can you say something so I can check if chat can hear you?
Say something. Hello.
Awesome. Smash. I think after an interview that you and I did, I don't know, what is it? Oh, it's already a year ago, probably.
December.
Is it in December, right before I went to Australia. Since then, that video has gathered something like, I don't know, 30,000 views on YouTube. And it's probably the most controversial video that I have in terms of feedback, in terms of, people getting angry about something, people being amazed about something. And obviously, it's what you do is something that splits the community, so to speak, into some people admiring it and some people hating it. The way I describe it as in that video is that you're probably EVE Online's largest industrialist based on monthly revenue. At least you were in December of last year. But can you introduce yourself and with a few words say, hey, that's what you do, and also share with us your daily or monthly revenue in your industrial activities?
Yeah, so I guess unofficially or officially the largest industrialist in EVE. As
I gave
of
you the title. You can have it.
yeah, yeah, 30,000 views. Holy crap. That probably does explain a lot of the messages that I get even to this week. But to introduce myself, largest industrialist in the game, I kind of took a step back from Tech 2 production. I retained my toes in the salvage market, hence I'm a relevant part of this conversation. And due to some events that have happened over the last month, the salvage market has gone up a lot. And then, yeah, in terms of revenues, just before I took a break, I think I was peaked around 7.5 trillion ISK per month in revenue. That's per month.
So I'm going to stop you
being
right
that,
there. So just show everyone. So you heard that right. He said 7.5 trillion ISK a month, and that's why I gave him that title, because I just don't know anyone that does more than that. And interestingly, it's not super broad, Smash, right? Like you have your areas of expertise that you do most revenue in, right?
yeah. So, yeah, there was a question about the in the video. I fully intended on leaving. And then as I was winding down, I was kind of looking at the competitive environment and the time requirements to stay. And I just went, well, for 10% of my old effort, I could retain about 40% of my old income. And I just said, well, that's not going to compete with the other things I wanted to do this year. So I kind of kept with it. So the Tech 2 production, so Tech 2 hull production was sort of the big time sink, but the benefit there is your profits are preordained. Like you can't lose money doing it. So it just becomes a logistical problem there. So once you have the capacity to make any Tech 2 ship, you can just set up a system to where You cycle through the most popular items and just make money, and then it just becomes a question of how much do you want to do it. And for me, it was a question of how much value could I turn over for a fixed amount of admin time. So I kind of budgeted a certain amount of time per week and just went to see how far I could scale with that time budget. And then as life changed, I was like, well, I don't want to spend this much time. I don't want to burn out by having to do my eve chores before I do other things. So I scaled back. What I retained was, and what I do currently is I still maintain a heavy influence in the structure rig market. And that's been basically my bread and butter, or I guess my playground for the last 5 years or so. So if you've bought a structure rig, there's like a 98% chance it came from me.
I mean, the reason I initially started talking to you was because you just were such a big trading partner for me, doing just daily trading in Jita, and especially related to salvage, which was one of the big items that I was trading in, and you were just buying up, or I would say hoovering up a lot of the supply that was there in Jita. So for those of you that don't know, structure rigs can be incredibly expensive, right? Especially the large ones. And when they are fitted to a structure, just like ship rigs, they are basically destroyed if you want to move the structure, or the structure is destroyed, obviously. But even if you're just moving across to a different region, as an alliance, for example, those rigs are lost, and that means new demand for your business, right, Smash?
So in the interview I didn't last, I kind of explained sort of two worlds when it came to industry. So with Tech 2 production, your profits are preordained. You just run through the same process and you kind of just you can pick your path for optimization. Where I said that there's this other world where you can have a market which the individual items are highly illiquid. So a particular structure rig might only sell two or three per day. Not per day, like per month. So on an individual item basis, it takes basically zero competition and there's no profit.
Hmm.
So it's it's not necessarily a market that you're blindly producing things. You're looking at the market from a more strategic level. So one of the things that I mentioned in the last talk is the balance between supply and demand. So the supply of salvage from things that get destroyed, and the end demand, which is that salvage going into new rigs, is balanced over very long time frames. But the supply of salvage is generally fixed and reasonably inelastic. But the demand for rigs on a week by week or even, let's say, month by month basis is variable by about a 5x.
Hmm.
So what can happen, and which has happened, and why we're having this conversation, is if events happen in the game where folks are anchoring a lot of new structures, the amount of liquidity that is visible on the market gets drained very quickly. And that results in rapid price gains. And as someone who happens to maintain a 98 to 100% market share, you know when this is going to happen. And it's very easy to kind of push prices off that cliff when the first person who decides to make Sodio rigs decides to drop in, 120 bill worth of orders, and all of a sudden nothing gets filled and the prices go up by 40%. Um,
And
so
so right
that's
now,
basically what happened.
and strategically speaking, right now, we are in a situation where we have not one, but multiple alliances moving from one region to another. And then we also have a war going on that is destroying a few structures here and there. And that is why right now we're in one of those hot phases that you described, right?
So the war had a minimal impact on structure demand just due to the regions not being populated with structures that would take a lot of salvage to populate. So it was mostly an area for miners and ratters. So you had mostly fortizars and some mining infrastructure. So that's not going to move the needle too much unless it was left to be resettled by someone who had different intentions, which I think is actually the case. I think goons moved into there. I don't know for certain. Um, but the larger impact is if a group decides to move. Like as you said, if the structure gets unanchored, the rigs are lost. That's uh, yeah. So there's that, or you have somebody who has established infrastructure and their space gets glassed,
Hmm.
and they happen to be an established enough group to where they can replace that infrastructure with capital that they've saved up. So, but yeah, if a couple regions for a group that's well established, if they want to commit 2 to 3 trillion in a short period of time, the visible market can't maintain it. But I can supply rigs to those people if they need it. So,
Do
um,
some advertising.
yeah, like yeah, I didn't want to turn this into like a public service
That's all
announcement
right.
saying, "Hey, if you need to drop 6 odios, the market will handle it." The market provides. But that's basically the mechanism in which I derive my profits. So with the T2 production, the ship production, it was sort of bread and butter, very stable, where with the rig market, it was sort of feast and famine. So the periods where things were quiet, I would say like the last 4-ish months, I was a net accumulator. I was that vacuum supply, like buying all the salvage that was available in the market. And once I met my sort of target, I could then slowly let prices drop and then play games with people that are trying to bottom fish and so on. And then I just wait for the game to play its course. And then when events happen, then I shape the market in such a way where all it takes is one eager individual to send the market quite high.
So I was looking at which items were particularly moving a lot, and yesterday this happened to be, for example, conductive polymer, and the biggest uh, the biggest sink for those and the biggest trade volume is stand-up XL manufacturing efficiency rigs. So is that an example for one of those that you're talking about?
Yeah. Um, yes. So if you want to drop 3 XL rigs into a Sodio, you're looking at close to 300,000 units
Yeah.
of contaminated Lorenz fluid. If you look at what's visibly available on the market, you can't buy it even if you had the ISK to pay for it. Um, if you're a group that wants to anchor 3 or 4 of these, there's your problem. Because what I said earlier is supply is inelastic. So you can double or triple the price and you're not actually going to see much more supply.
Yeah,
That
and
was
these
actually something I was actually quite surprised by and something I tested for. And if you're interested in data sleuthing, you'll actually see experiments for where I've run where I've taken slightly less bottlenecked salvage types and just tripled or quadrupled their price just to see if I could actually coax people into selling their inventories and then setting the price when I found a whale. So like smash trigger units was a really good example over the last few years is I just kept pushing the price up till had a whale come in and sell me 20 million units worth of it. And that just became the running price for about a year. And then I've kind of let it do its thing since then. Um,
but and how do you define a whale in that context? I mean, it's just a large scale trader in Eve Online, or someone who spends a lot of money on Eve Online.
um, it depends on the type of salvage. So, um, it's actually kind of fascinating because I was warned by friends that there were folks that would just mine like rat and salvage, rat and salvage, rat and salvage, and then never sell. And years go by, and they accumulate a lot of salvage. But then I would tell my friends, I'd be like, "Hey, like 60 billion ISK turns over every day on a regular day. So if someone comes with 20 billion of some random amount, it doesn't actually materially change too much. And that was sort of the aha moment that I got about 3 years ago. Is if someone comes in and sells 50 to half a trillion ISK worth of salvage, it gets worked out within a few weeks. So
And
for the conductive polymers, which was an example, I can prevent someone from building a structure rig by making sure they can't get one type of salvage. You can have everything else, but if you're missing one type of salvage,
mhm,
game's over. So there are, within the T1 and the T2 market, there are, I would say, the common bottlenecks, which contribute, let's say, most of the build cost. So these are generally hard to get, but then there's sort of like a second tier. So probably like the third to fifth most expensive to build. While these are easier to accumulate during low demand periods, it takes a trivial amount of ISK to just buy out the whole market, even if you're paying 2 or 3 times the going rate.
and
And then all of a sudden,
in your
then I'm the only game in
experience,
town. So
yeah.
no one can make rigs other than me unless you've previously accumulated stuff. And the market will always have rigs for sale. So the person has a choice between waiting, which, there's an opportunity cost with that. If you don't put up infrastructure, you're not turning over risk or you're not supplying a service to your group. Paying more, so raising the price even more, but based on what I said earlier, supply is inelastic, so you can raise prices quite a lot. At a certain point, I'm not actually going to keep raising the price of finished rigs. So there comes a point where you're actually going to pay more to make your own rig than it would be to buy. But for those folks that, let's say, got 80% of the way and now are short, you now have a sunk cost sort of dilemma. Do
Mhm.
you buy the rig and then dump the salvage that you accumulated over the last few weeks? Or do you just bite the bullet and get the last remaining bit?
So hyper capitalism in action here. Do you understand why some people uh, don't agree with your approach?
Don't Which approach?
Let's say to control the market. To I mean, because I would argue that in a way you are. I mean, it seems to me that you like you're a, you thrive off that power that you have on that market. That's what keeps you going, right? I mean, is generation itself is not what keeps you going.
It So in a previous life, I was an equities trader, and my role was to actually find algorithms written by banks and exploiting them. So that knife fight that you would get is something I still get, uh, I guess, joy from in Eve.
Hmm.
So the structure rig market is a market that has an industrial component, but it is pure market PvP. The industry component is a I don't know, trivial step. The blueprints are cheap. The rigs take less than an hour to make for the T1 rigs. So they're small, they're easy to transport, they're expensive. So, if you get exploded, and like today I was moving 450 billion ISK worth of rigs in one load. So like if you explode, that's a thing. But it's not the industry side that makes this market. It's the strategic and gameplay side of things. So that I quite enjoy. So when you see events in the game and you know how it's going to play out, it's quite fun to watch it unfold. So
And the larger alliances, would you say, the hypothesis is always that they try to be as independent from the Jita market as possible, especially on the supply side. But it sounds to me from your stories that that's not the case. And when the S hits the fan, they absolutely need that additional supply from Jita, or
outside
it's
mother, yeah.
or it's other industrialists trying to fill the nullsec demand by wading into a market that they don't know what they're dealing with, right? a good summary?
Sort of. It is not uncommon during a war where stuff is exploding and things are being salvaged that someone who's doing the salvage takes that loot, sells it in Jita, and then one of the, let's say, infrastructure folks in the same group a few weeks later end up buying finished rigs from me.
Mm-hmm.
So, more organized groups will obviously try to take that supply and use it internally. But other groups, it's enterprising individuals making a buck for themselves. So uh, not too many people are going to go and salvage a big fleet fight and go, great, I'm going to go make a bunch of moon drilling rigs from this. They're going to take the easy win and sell the salvage.
And the 98% market share you're talking about though is the Forge market share pretty much, because you're not
No, no, all five main high sec regions.
yeah, but not because the alliances are building their own rigs to a large extent, uh
Where they can, yes.
possibly where they can. So that the 98% is high sec folks.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
the visible market. So
the
you
visible
could
market.
take the market history of the five core regions, map it to my sales history, and yeah, it's 98 to 100% on most of the items, or if not all.
Cool. All right. So summing it up, most of the price increases that we have seen recently in salvage is triggered by structures coming down, large alliances moving, and them having to replace a lot of these rigs. But since you control most of the high sec market, a lot of these prices that or price movements that we're seeing currently are almost all directly or indirectly influenced by you. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, so the the system that I'm looking for right now is I'm looking for two people trying to make rigs, and then their competition ends up forcing prices. So it's kind of like almost like a snowball on a hill. You kind of get the little ball going and give it a little push, and the momentum carries it to the point where people capitulate. So the expectation is finished rig prices probably aren't going to go much higher. I don't want them to go much higher than this. So if salvage prices continue to get forced up, then on paper, from spot price, it might look like I'm taking a loss. But my inventory is anywhere between 6 weeks to 4 months old. So
Mm-hmm.
there's I'm not concerned because I've seen this cycle enough times where I know. So for folks that are looking for a forecast, within 3 or 4 weeks, the people will have their structures up, and demand will go back to that baseline, which is about 60 bill a day.
Okay.
So you can wait, and you might get lucky. Um, but prices are sticky once they go up. So, like, while salvage prices might go down, the rig prices will take a little bit of time
So it's all
because
about
no
selling
one
at the
can
right time.
compete with me.
Yeah.
Because the employees that I exploit, they don't have any inventory left, so they have to wait for me to give them the ability to reaccumulate inventory. So
Yeah. Somebody in chat is asking how many Excel charts does it take? You've graduated out of Excel, Smash. Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't think that this would be like this form of gameplay is not really a spreadsheet problem. Like like you'd maybe need something to uh maybe match spot price with build cost and then your inventory cost with spot price, but that's not too terribly complicated. Because like I said, the structure rig market is not a really an industry activity, so you don't need anything complex.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, yeah, the the data infrastructure that I set up, I'm using a SQL database, and then Power BI is my visualization layer. So, but yeah, for years and years and years, I used spreadsheets, and then moved off them once I outgrew them. So,
And
because
then
yeah,
I remember in
spread-
December we talked and we reconnected you with a long lost nemesis, I think. Um on stream,
nemesis is
live on
not the right
stream.
word. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Competitor possibly. Um is he still playing, and is that feud still going on?
I wouldn't call it a feud.
All right.
They were the original incumbent, so there was a battle when I was much smaller for control. So this is why I say, like, this is a market that should be, in theory, impossible to derive profits from. But once they took a step back, they were really the only person with the financial and intellectual capacity to be a challenge. The entities that remained were people that weren't paying attention, either because they didn't understand the market or they were running automation. So the folks that were running bots, once you understood the rules, they were very easy to farm. And for certain botting operations or market update operations, these characters can last for years before eventually CCP catches up with them. And then, yeah, for the remaining human, they're effectively my employee and have been so for the last 5 years. So,
I think Crota says in chat, Sir SmashAlot forced me out of the structure rig market into Dixie and Amar back in the day. Well,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, so there were a lot, like I'm not the only person in there. So there are people that will dip their toe in and build a couple rigs. I can't actually differentiate between those individuals and people that may have bought rigs and then
Mhm.
decide to resell them 6 months later. So when I talk about a competitor, I'm talking about folks that are looking for broad market coverage, that are doing that because they understand that it's not at the individual level that you're looking for sales. You're looking at it from a system level, because it's 60 billion a day across the market. But what rig sells that day is sort of a random distribution. Well, not
Mhm.
really a random distribution, but um, it's a bit uh, spread out. So
Cool. Well, Smash, there's a lot we could still talk about, but I think we'll do that in a follow-up interview in one of my next streams. Would love to have you back on there. It's, no matter how you look at it, it's very impressive what you're doing with this market and in EVE Online overall. So thanks for stopping by and explaining the salvage market to us. And yeah, any other things you want to mention while you have the CCP stream audience?
CCP stream. Yeah, I guess if this is to a broader audience, if folks did watch the previous interview, the takeaway that should not be viewed from that is you need trillions of ISK and dozens of accounts to make a profit. I think that was sort of lost in the message of showing big numbers. um, the non PvP side of industry, or like the non heavy PvP side of industry, is just a math problem that you can work out and solve. And if you choose to scale, that is a separate problem all into itself. You can more than easily flex your account with a single account, or even a single character doing industry, once you kind of understand the basics.
So understanding and knowledge is more important than account scaling.
Absolutely, because a bad process at 50 accounts is still a bad process. You're just now running yourself into the ground. Um,
Yeah, that's like people running a very large negative skill farm because they're not taking advantage of the right discounts. See it all the
yeah.
time. All right, Smash.
Um,
Awesome to have you back on the show, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks for stopping by.
yeah. Awesome.